trying to see life with the cup half full can sometimes be really difficult. But it's the willingness and the desire and the want to get better is the best place to start. Today is a new day. I am Nikki G, your host. Welcome to the Lone Doctrine, a safe space to bridge the gap between your authentic self and your mental health. We are your food for thought exploration station in order to make today better than yesterday. This week, we are talking about action. We choose a topic of the month every month, and this month it is action. Taking action when life is really, really hard. Sometimes that is the hardest thing to do, pun intended. But we want to give you actionable and practical tips and those easy steps of even getting to the point of action. Because sometimes when we're feeling depressed, sometimes when we're sad, sometimes when we're disappointed about something, or something just didn't go the way we wanted it to in our lives, or there just feels like everything's going wrong, or it's one thing after the other, it's time to take a breath, step back, and start taking those small steps towards the evolution of what we may need in this chapter of our lives, which may be not what we needed a month ago, or a day ago, or a moment ago. I truly believe that in times where it's really difficult, when we have life's inevitable challenges, we can flip the script and use it as an opportunity for growth. Even in the darkest moments, even in times in my life where I felt like I literally was losing everything and I actually lost people that I loved, I didn't think there was a tomorrow. I didn't know how to go on. I didn't know how to live this new life. And sometimes even things that have to do with family or your children or work or just your day to day can be daunting. And doing these things, taking this action, trying to be positive, trying to see life with the cup half full can sometimes be really difficult. But it's the willingness and the desire and the want to get better is the best place to start. And that is a part of taking action. Sometimes we misdirect the word action. In a literal sense, it means to do something. But what I mean by action is that we want to have the commitment to ourselves to be better, to do better every single day, no matter how far, how wide, how little, or how much that happens from moment to moment is relative. Because sometimes the smallest steps, sometimes the thing you think is pointless, is the actual action that gets you to the next step that will have more meaning than you can possibly understand. A lot of times when we finally get to a place where we're enjoying something, where we feel that happiness, we feel that joy, we've gotten that dream job, we've succeeded in something, and we just feel better, we think that sometimes it just magically happened. Like, oh, today's a good day. Yesterday was a bad day. But if we really sit back and we analyze all the little things we did leading up to that, guaranteed there were small little actions that shifted your perspective, that shifted your energy, that shifted your willingness to allow the happiness, to allow the success to happen in your life. When we are closed off by negativity, when we are closed off by depression and sadness, it's almost as if we just close the door to anything good. We close the door and sometimes we lock it. Now, it's not to say that we want to completely ignore these feelings, because a lot of times when we do have these quote unquote negative emotions, it's telling us something. It could be telling us something about our health, or it could be telling us something about our mental well being. And it is the most courageous, and it shows strength, and it shows clarity and willingness and maturity to address these different emotions. It's okay to not feel okay, but we don't want to make camp. We don't want to stay there. We want to recognize these emotions. We want to get to know ourselves so well that when we experience these things, we can differentiate. We can figure out, okay, is this just me being hungry? Is this just me being malnourished? Is this just me being thirsty? Did I go through a hard time? Do I need to work on my communication skills? Did someone hurt me? Do I need to do all these various things in order to push through? And those are the small little actions. Those are the actions sometimes we don't talk about because we want to see action as something very literal. Even just last week, we went over the tips of taking action, things you can do like exercising and checking in with yourself and going over all these very action oriented things, which granted do help, especially when you find what works for you. But this week, I wanted to remind you of the things we don't necessarily give credit to. The times where we choose to get out of bed, the times where we choose to go on that walk, the times that we choose to take a deep breath and to keep pushing forward, to just simply sometimes getting up and going throughout our day is an action step. A lot of times, what happens is when we experience these more negative emotions, a lot of judgment comes into play, and sometimes a lot of shame and guilt comes into play. We can thank our societal norms for that. It's almost seen as taboo to talk about these things, which, granted, it is getting a little bit better, but it almost paints this picture that we're weak, that if we're depressed or sad or not feeling good or angry or frustrated or grumpy or whatever it is that isn't on the spectrum of joy and happiness and happy go lucky, that something must be wrong with us, that we're weak. But that couldn't be more wrong. We are human, and we are here to experience the full spectrum of emotions. You cannot have light without dark. We would not have happiness without sadness. We really would not know the difference. The problem is that because we're put into this expectation of always having to be fine, it causes those negative emotions to escalate. And it causes this never ending cycle and this never ending race to try to feel better. I love using this analogy, the Chinese finger trap. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It is a toy, and it is like a straw, and you put your fingers in either side. And if you pull your fingers apart, once they're in this Chinese finger trap, they will not come out. The harder you pull, the less they will not come out. You're completely stuck. So basically, the harder you try to pull apart, the harder you try to get away, the less chance you have of freeing your fingers from this trap. The trick is if you push your fingers together, then it releases the trap and you can pull your fingers out of the trap. In a lot of ways, I believe that sometimes when we allow ourselves to push into those negative emotions, when we allow ourselves to learn from them, when we allow ourselves to feel, when we allow and remind ourselves that these feelings are a part of being human, that is the most important action step in getting through, of learning and raising our frequency and raising our capability of when those emotions come back around, we're able to handle them even better because they will come back around. That is just the normalcy of being a human, of experiencing the full spectrum. Now, granted, I want to encourage you to not have the perspective of everything bad is going to happen. It's just going to happen. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is try to have the optimism of when those quote unquote bad things happen. How can you see those things as solution based? How can we respond and not just react? Sometimes we are so reactive that all of the solutions, all of the productivity, all of the constructive thoughts just fly out the window. And then we reset the clock of experiencing these emotions over and over and over and over and over again, experiencing the pain over and over and over and over and over again. So this week, I want you to try and think of those steps that maybe you don't always recognize of the actions before the action, because those are just as important as the actual action. And when we're experiencing hard times, taking that action is so important because you're remapping your mind, you're reteaching your body and your mind a new way of life. You're creating a healthy lifestyle because just like anything that's repeated, you will teach yourself the negativity. You will teach yourself the negative outlook. You will teach yourself that the glass is half empty. You will continue to repeat these negative stories, and that's what your go to will end up being. That's what will become second nature. It's not necessarily always because something negative is happening. It's because you put on these negative glasses and that's all you can see, when the good might be right in front of you. As you move towards these actions, as you try to figure out what works for you, stay open. Have the willingness to evolve. Remember that evolution and changing these things as you go through different chapters of your life shows that you're growing and is a good thing. Instead of thinking of it like, well, I used to do this and it used to work really well and now it doesn't work anymore. What am I going to do now? Well, there are an endless amount of things you can do to create a healthy lifestyle. So find something new. Take the action. Create the repetition in positivity. Create the repetition in raising your frequency. We only have this one life to live. And sometimes we have to step back and ask ourselves, what is worth my energy? And a lot of times the negativity that we're carrying around with us is not worth our energy. Next time, we're going to talk about that idea of repetition and how we can start remapping our mind and how we can start changing our perspective when we see things, when we go through things, when we talk to people, because those are also great action steps. Before we leave, I want to invite you to join us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok to get a full cup of all things positive with food for thought and ideas to keep you moving forward and taking action. I'd also love to invite you to join us at patreon.com, patreon.com/Lone Doctrine. We are a listener-supported podcast, and your support helps keep us on air while also creating a safe space and a safe community for those in need. So visit us at patreon.com/Lone Doctrine, and anything big or small goes a long way, and we are so grateful for your support. So today and every day, take action, even if it's something small, because true change comes from small steps, comes from one step at a time. So get out there, take action, and keep fighting the good fight.